Hafide, welcome to our special presentation of our series, Asia Pacific Sustainability and Disaster Preparedness. I'm regional correspondent Thomas Manglona, and I just spent 2 weeks in October in Japan with the Association for Promotion of International Cooperation Japan Journalism Fellowship, where we explored those topics, sustainability and disaster preparedness. Tonight, we're going to share with you our series of reports from our 2 weeks in Japan, and to kick it off, we speak with APIC's president. The private foundation's president, Toshinori Shigeye, says our digital age has eased the barrier that geographical boundaries posed in fostering international cooperation. It's been the organization's goal since it was established in 1975.
The initial objective was to increase the domestic understanding of official development assistance.
The focus has sharpened to include the environment, tourism, and development in the Pacific and Caribbean. KUAM News is participating in their journalism fellowship focused on sustainability and disaster preparedness, which has made this reporting possible.
Sharing those experiences is very important. That's why we started bringing journalists and also governmental officials mainly in those three areas.
The move comes at a time of increased tension in the Indo-Pacific, with China's soft power hitting small islands hard during difficult economic times.
We are hoping we could do more in all countries, but we have, for some reasons, we have done much more in Micronesia, for example. We engaged with Micronesian people for tourism, infrastructure, small infrastructure project. And also, we have been doing quite a lot with young people's studying. As a matter of fact, we are located right next to a good university called Sophia University.
In a separate interview, a Ministry of Foreign Affairs official said that Japan prioritizes its Pacific partners, supporting their development and respecting their needs. That includes hosting the 10th Pacific Islands Leaders Meeting, better known as the Palm Summit, in Japan in 2024, which will include leaders from Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Those discussions will center on issues related to climate change and disaster resilience, just as Micronesia prepares for more frequent and stronger storms. Thomas Manglona, KUAM News, Tokyo, Japan. And in our next report, we take you to a community in Japan that recycles more than 80% of its trash as a result of cooperation between the residents and their government. Here's more. This landfill has become a prime example of what's possible when a community comes together. The community here recycling more than 80% of their trash. When Osaki Town in southern Japan first began its recycling system in 1998, it collected 4,382 tons of trash and just 35 tons of recyclables. Those numbers have drastically changed. By 2020, the amount of trash going to the landfill had fallen to just 690 tons, while residents set aside a whopping 3,300 tons of materials for recycling.
Well, since the launch of this recycling activities, 25 years passed, meaning it's already almost like a second nature. People just do it, they take it for granted that things are to be separated. And also, they know that the landfill situation is at stake. At some point it will be filled, so, they have no choice in a way.
But success is a choice that Osaki's 12,000 residents and another 40,000 people from nearby towns make when their trash is dumped at the landfill. The government sprang into action and the community bought into change. This landfill was expected to be filled by 2004, but after the community came together, they added another 40 years of it being used. So how can this be done in the Pacific?
Yes, first of all, the inhabitants, they need to know how the waste is being treated and what is happening, what is the current state of the waste. And they first have to see it, know it, and accept it. And then it might take, well, say, leadership and together with people, they need to have a really strong will to solve the problem. So, and also with a strong will to believe that, there will be a way once they deal with it.
That strong will was apparent at the Seoul Recycling Center nearby. It collects 24 categories of materials that are sent to a processing center to be made into new items like water bottles.
We ask the citizens to wash them properly, okay? Citizens wash them properly. They take off the labels and they put it in a plastic bag and it's brought here.
The center was built in 2004, costing around 300 million yen. Today, that's just over $2 million US. Here's just one example of how things are recycled in Japan. Styrofoam is put into a machine that melts it into this mold, which will later be used to make new CD cases. The center collects recyclables from 100,000 residents, and they practice what they preach on the job, even using used cooking oil as fuel for their machinery. We asked the chief of the Intermediate Treatment Department, Daisaku Kozono, if smaller communities with fewer resources could adopt their model.
We are able to do what we do because of the cooperation of the local the residents. So yes, with technology we can bring it elsewhere, but we really need to have cooperation, understanding of the inhabitants. When we say cooperation, it's about separating garbage properly, for example.
He says it is not about making a profit. Thomas Manglona, KUAM News, near Osaki Town. We'll have more from our series Asia Pacific Sustainability and Disaster Preparedness right after this. Welcome back to our series Asia Pacific Sustainability and Disaster Preparedness. In our next report, we take you to an elementary school in Japan that is redefining lunchtime with the environment and sustainability in mind. It's midday at Osaki Elementary School. The sounds of 300 elementary students echo through the halls. The school is reimagining what lunchtime looks like. First, students serve each other a meal prepared by the school's chef. It's a discipline they've developed ever since they first entered school.
For them, this is something they take for granted. They're part of the everyday, but that's not the case at all the schools.
It's all part of Osaki's 2-decade push to develop a circular economy based on sustainability and recycling. For this generation, living sustainably is a way of life. Adults here fondly call them recycle natives.
It's fun. 簡単です。
It's easy. It's fun. It's easy.
It's fun.
When lunch is over, the fun continues. Students jump back into action to manage their food waste and dishes in a simple but meticulous process.
So after they've eaten, the idea firstly is that they would eat everything, finish everything, and then they would put back all the plates. Then, as with a milk carton, they would rinse it and open up to flatten it so that it's and dry it and they're ready to be recycled.
Their leftovers are likely to end up at the organic compost plant run by the town's Seoul Recycling Center. Out of the 80% of trash kept from going to the landfill per year, 64% becomes compost. 24.5% of that comes from food and kitchen waste, and nearly 40% from grass, leaves, wood, and chopsticks. The goal is for these recycled natives to continue the town's world-famous sustainability practices, with the hope of fostering a healthier climate and environment.
So by doing this, they learn the need to recycle, and it just tells you the importance of recycling the products.
Thomas Manglona, KUAM News, Osaki Town. Now we shift our focus to a city in southern Japan, which is building back better after a rain and flooding disaster 3 years ago. Residents in Hitoyoshi said that the roaring of the Kuma River made it hard to hear public emergency announcements over the city's loudspeakers in the July 2020 rain disaster that caused major flooding. This led the city to create a new disaster alert lighting system at the Mizunoti Bridge. Torrential rain and heavy flooding destroyed thousands of homes and claimed the lives of at least 77 people. It was the worst flooding in 50 years. Teruki Torigoe manages the city's disaster prevention division. He told us that they've implemented new measures to better communicate warnings, including providing free government radios to each household, sharing information online, and perhaps the most innovative measure, using the Mizunoti Bridge's lights to indicate the river's water levels. Yellow indicates normal water levels, white is a flood warning, and when the lights turn red, it's time to evacuate. The project cost nearly 28 million yen. Today that comes to $186,000. The new system has been welcomed by residents like Kenji Sakoda. He's the chief brewer at Yamatoichi Brewery, which was completely submerged back in 2020.
The climate change and also terrestrial rain, it's really the reality, so this can happen every year, maybe next year even.
They've rebuilt the brewery, which was founded in 1898, relocating their offices to the second floor and purchasing cranes so they can lift and move equipment. And Sakuda has rebuilt his nearby home with the next disaster in mind.
Yes, I think even if we are hit by another one, whatever that is, the damage would be minimum, and I think we are ready to rebuild.
He says he learned many lessons from the flood, including the importance of community. Thomas Manglona, KUAM News, Hitoyoshi City. Thank you so much for watching our special presentation. We'll have more from our trip to Japan right after this. Welcome back to our special presentation of our series, Asia-Pacific Sustainability and Disaster Preparedness. Our next story brings us to an earthquake museum, which chronicles the stories of a pair of earthquakes in 2016 and highlights the lessons learned from that disaster. This museum behind me captures the stories of the 2016 earthquakes and explores the lessons learned for the future. Time is frozen on this clock at the Kumamoto Earthquake Disaster Museum, Kyoku. 1:25 a.m. on April 16, 2016. That was when a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit. Residents were still reeling from another powerful quake. It had a magnitude of 6.4 and had struck just 28 hours earlier. The back-to-back earthquakes claimed 273 lives, injured 3,000 people, and damaged thousands of homes. Takayuki Kubo's from nearby Kagoshima. He was living across the country in Tokyo at the time of the disaster and felt he had to help. 3 days after the second earthquake, he arrived in Kumamoto to volunteer with a disaster recovery nonprofit. Today, as the museum's director, his focus is on using the past to educate people so they're ready when the next disaster comes.
I felt it is my mission to keep telling the stories and convey the memory, share the memories of the earthquake. So here I am. I'm together working with 50 personnel, including some guides.
There are many people like Kubo who rushed to Kumamoto to help it recover and rebuild. The museum features an entire section on lessons learned from the earthquakes. One resident wrote, "Many houses built before the revised earthquake resistance standards that were introduced in May 1981 suffered serious damage." Another person said that there was confusion and anxiety caused by misinformation on social media.
Well, whether it's Japan or elsewhere in the world, wherever it is, earthquakes can happen, and you cannot eliminate earthquake from happening. You cannot stop it. So we work with the premise that earthquakes may happen, and this is the attitude or way of living. You always have to bear that in mind and act with that mentality so as to save as many lives as possible.
That mentality also includes tangible actions like preparing a go bag with essential items needed for evacuation or relocation after a disaster strikes, such as food, lights, water, and hygiene products. The community as a whole strives to live in harmony with nature in spite of the likelihood of another disaster. A national early earthquake detection system sometimes sends alerts to their phones before they can feel the ground shaking. Kubo says Kumamoto's recovery has quickly progressed, with many nonprofits supporting the effort, and Kubo believes most people in Kumamoto are better prepared for the next natural disaster.
The earthquake can happen anytime, anywhere, so just be prepared. And in order to help each other, what's important is to share information.
Thomas Manglona, KUAM News, Minami Aso Village. In our next report and our last report of this series, we feature a tech startup in Japan which focuses on providing an alternative water infrastructure. WOTA, a play on the word water, got its start when a group of young engineers realized that Japan has a big problem. Its water infrastructure is rapidly aging, and so is its population.
We need to renew infrastructure, and that infrastructure investment is going to increase. But at the same time, what's happening all around Japan is that we're losing population, and so the revenue from water rates is going to decrease rapidly.
WOTA has launched 2 products so far. One is the WOTA Box, a portable recycling system that can be used in disaster sites and rural areas. Its proprietary filtration system provides a reusable supply of clean water for washing hands and for showers. This product, called the Wash, is a self-contained hand-washing station that recycles water. The company says the WOTA Box has helped over 20,000 people in disaster areas, while more than 3 million people have used the hand-washing unit, especially during the pandemic. WOTA says that one hurdle has been convincing people that recycled water is safe to use.
Using water reuse is not something that we do, that we know that we do at home, for example, because reuse is not put in place by government yet. So it helps building this social acceptance, and you touch it, you see it, you see it's quite safe, at least for grey water, and we hope that in the coming years, regulation also will evolve to allow using water unit or reuse water, because it's kind of one of the biggest obstacles to use the reuse.
WOTA's next product is a standalone water recycling system for homes and businesses. It can supply water off the grid and also replace large centralized water systems.
The very simple concept is that if we could build something where we can recycle the water that is being used in your home on site, then we wouldn't need, the large systems that we have today.
3 rural municipalities in Japan already use WOTA's technology, and the company is in discussions with 20 more Japanese communities. WOTA also wants to work with island nations burdened by dwindling access to fresh water and costly infrastructure. Thomas Manglona, KUAM News, Tokyo. And that's our show. Thanks so much for joining us on this special presentation of our series, Asia Pacific Sustainability and Disaster Preparedness. We'd like to thank everyone at APIC for this opportunity and our friends at the Foreign Press Center, Japan, for their guidance and support. For now, I'm Thomas Manglona reporting on Saipan.